The fluorescent lights of conference room 7 Delta hummed with the same frequency as the artificial gravity generators beneath their feet. Commander Aliana Reeves sat at the back of the briefing hall, arms crossed, watching the new temporal mechanics instructor gesture enthusiastically at the holographic projection floating above the podium. As you can see, the instructor continued, his voice carrying the self-assured tone of someone who'd never actually experienced a temporal slip. The resonance cascade during a jump creates what we call a memory echo in the quantum foam. This phenomenon was first documented during the Kepler 442b expedition in 2287. Aliana's jaw tightened. She'd been on that expedition. She'd been the one who documented it. Next to her, John Martinez leaned over, stylus hovering above his datapad. "You getting all this?" he whispered. "This is exactly what'll be on the Phase 3 certification exam." She didn't respond. Her dark eyes fixed on the projection where her own hand-drawn diagrams hastily sketched in the cargo hold of the Meridian. While the ship's chronometers spun wildly, now floated in perfect, sanitized vector graphics. The instructor advanced to the next slide. The critical breakthrough came when the exploration team realized they could use the ship's quantum entanglement communicator to send stabilization frequencies backward through the temporal distortion field. "That wasn't a breakthrough," Aliana muttered. "That was desperation." John glanced at her. "What, nothing?" But it wasn't nothing. She remembered the screaming alerts, the way Lieutenant Chen's nose had started bleeding as local time and shipboard time diverged by 17 seconds. She remembered John 3 years younger then, fresh out of the academy, frantically recalibrating the QEC while she'd shouted calculations over the claxons, praying her hastily theorized solution wouldn't tear them apart at the molecular level. The instructor's voice pulled her back. The navigator's quick thinking saved the entire crew. Unfortunately, the physiological effects of the exposure meant she was unable to continue active duty in deep space operations. Aliana's hands curled into fists under the table. That was the sanitized version, wasn't it? The official record that made her sound like a casualty rather than the person who'd solved an impossible problem. They didn't mention that the physiological effects were her brain developing an uncanny awareness of temporal inconsistencies, a side effect that made her nauseated every time she approached a jump-capable vessel, but also made her the foremost expert on temporal navigation theory in the solar system. Commander Reeves's debrief reports, the instructor continued, and Aliana's head snapped up, provided the foundational framework for all modern temporal safety protocols. Her notation system is now standard across the fleet. John's stylus stopped moving. He turned to look at her, really look at her, for the first time since the lecture began. "Reeves, you single quotes Wait. That Commander Reeves." She met his gaze steadily. John had transferred to the lunar station training facility 6 months ago. They'd worked together before. Sure, but that was field work, different world from the academic theory being taught here. He'd probably never connected the dots. "Why aren't you taking notes?" John asked, his voice low but insistent. The instructor was now explaining the mathematical model for predicting cascade formations, equations scrolling across the display. Aliana recognized every single variable. She'd named half of them during a 72-hour debrief session while drinking terrible coffee and trying to explain to the committee of theorists what it felt like to experience 17 seconds of your life in nonlinear order. "Because he's teaching my debrief reports," she said quietly. John's eyes widened. He looked from her to the projection, where a complex three-dimensional graph rotated slowly. All of this. Pages 47 through 93 of my incident report," Aliana confirmed. "He's even using my original terminology. See that? Temporal viscosity. That was me trying to describe something I didn't have words for at 3 in the morning." The instructor moved on, discussing the crew composition of the Kepler expedition, listing names like they were characters in a history text rather than people Aliana had shared meals with, argued with, nearly died with. When he mentioned Chen, there was no reference to how she'd gone back to active duty, how she was currently stationed on Europa, how she still sent Aliana messages every month asking when she'd return to space. The navigator, the instructor said, demonstrated remarkable insight despite lacking formal training in quantum mechanics. Aliana laughed, a short, sharp sound that made several students turn around. Despite lacking formal training, she'd had 3 advanced degrees by the time she'd stepped foot on the Meridian. But that part never made it into the official story, did it? The narrative was cleaner if she was just naturally gifted rather than rigorously educated, sir. A student near the front raised her hand. "Do we know what happened to Commander Reeves after the incident?" The instructor paused. "She took a position in research and training, I believe. The temporal exposure made deep space travel ... inadvisable." "I'm sitting right here," Aliana said, her voice carrying across the hall. The room went silent. Every head turned. The instructor's face cycled through confusion, recognition, and then a deep, uncomfortable red. "Commander Reeves," he stammered, I wasn't aware you were auditing this course." "I'm not auditing," she said, standing up. Her chair scraped against the floor. "I'm observing. There's a difference." She walked down the aisle, her footsteps echoing. "And for the record, The temporal exposure didn't make deep space travel inadvisable, it made it impossible. Every time I get within 50 meters of a jump drive, I can feel time bending around it. Do you know what that's like? Having your neurons fire in awareness of something that hasn't happened yet. She reached the podium, standing beside the instructor. But I'm here because someone has to make sure this information is taught correctly, that the next generation of navigators doesn't just memorize my equations, they understand why they work. The instructor opened his mouth, then closed it. Aliana turned to address the students. Everything you've learned today is accurate, but it's incomplete. Equations can describe what happens during a temporal cascade, but they can't prepare you for the moment. When your perception splits and you're experiencing both the cause and effect simultaneously. That's not in any debrief report because there aren't words for it yet. John stood up in the back, his datapad clutched in his hand. Then teach us, he said. Really teach us. She looked at him, at all of them, these bright-eyed cadets who thought space was an adventure waiting to happen, who hadn't yet learned that every breakthrough was written in someone's sacrifice. All right, Aliana said. Get comfortable. This is going to take a while. She pulled up her own files on the projection system, her actual notes. Not the cleaned-up versions that had made it into the official record. Diagrams with question marks, crossed-out calculations, desperate theories scrawled in the margins, the truth, messy and human and real. Let me tell you what really happened out there, she began, and why you need to know more than just the equations if you want to survive. The instructor quietly took a seat in the front row, and for the first time in 3 years, Aliana started teaching. End